You guys will probably find this topic as a bit of a curveball, given that we already discussed this the last time. And so I apologize ahead of time. I wasn't entirely done shitting on certain monarchists, but we need to move to a different class of them now. And this is the last time. These are the only remaining monarchists I have an issue with. As you guys know, I'm not the biggest fan of Spoon, but I realized he's not the entire picture, and I realized what the entire picture is just today, actually.
Oh?
Okay, so I think we need to address the problematic true monarchists. Yarvin, Aiden, the guy that for some reason they call the Oracle of Virginia, Christian Hines, I think you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
I think you pronounce it Hines. And of course, Spoon. So these are basically the elites of our own community who all behave exactly as elites behave in general. They keep to themselves, except for the occasional collaborating solely with each other, and they keep neglecting their own people, which is us, their own people, so to speak. Like we are the bulk of the monarchist community, and they hardly pay attention to us. I'll admit Spoon pays attention to us more than the others, but the others basically don't at all, and Spoon himself barely does anyway. You guys deserve some praise, and I want to get this out of the way too. You guys have been doing it right. As much as
shucks.
as much as I didn't want to be the leader, when I first joined this community and took a look around, I noticed that we don't have leadership. And when I pointed this out, Okairo was actually the one to say, well, I guess it's you then. And Sen seemed to have agreed with him. And in my opinion, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think I've been a good leader so far, but correct me if I'm wrong. Every pro-monarchist video I publish, every pro-monarchist post on Twitter I post, I don't get paid to do this. I do it because I believe in it. And you guys deserve praise too, because you don't get paid for this either. I don't know your personal situations, but it's probably reasonable to assume that this takes some kind of toll on your guys' personal lives in some way. Probably not far-fetched to assume that. So we do this because we actually believe in it. We don't do it for money. We hope money eventually comes from it because that would help us be more comfortable in doing it, but we don't do it for money. But look at our top monarchists. Not one of them talks about monarchy on a regular basis, or even what I would call a part-time basis. Spoon puts monarchism in his bios, and that's pretty much it. All of his videos are either about current events, video games, or drama. And he might sprinkle in a little monarchism at the top, maybe. Aiden's content is 0% monarchism. Christian Hines, same thing. And actually, I had to ask Christian Hines directly if he even is a monarchist. And he actually answered. He said yes. And then after he answered me, it was in a comment section, one of his threads, a slew of commenters expressed being surprised that he's a monarchist. So he is a monarchist, and most of his audience didn't even know that. So in other words, our elite monarchists, so to speak, completely conceal or neglect monarchism. They don't give a shit about us either, about us, like on the lower rung. Aiden used to be on the Accord server. When did she actually interact with us when she was on it? And how often does... What?
Well, she's never interacted on the server itself.
Well, there you go. Never. And Spoon is on it still. How often does he actually interact with us?
Only when he's pinged, and even then it's mildly rare.
It's pretty rare, yeah. When do either of them collaborate with us. No,
Never.
they don't. But we all know that they collab with each other. Spoon and Aiden broke up, but then they realized they'd rather have each other than be closer to the rest of us. So they got back
They got each other.
So they got back together.
Sorry, I had to break out into the song for a second.
Yes, you did.
Wait.
And it's forgivable.
Wait, what?
So
It's
Oh,
like,
Brandon, you don't know?
oh, we're halfway there. You know, that song, it's part of that.
Isn't that the person that like took the money?
they resolved it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how they did, but they did.
Yeah, all Spoon
Haven't
said.
told any of us.
Yeah, all Spoon said was he
What?
was being stupid, and that's about it.
He also
Oh.
took down the video where he lambasted, I'm sorry, Aiden for what he did. So however they sorted that out, I don't know. I don't think they mentioned it much at all when Spoon came back to Broken Crown. So
Yeah, they
maybe
resolved
someone
it
else.
basically.
None of us, I don't think, will ever know how, since they don't seem to be very talkative about it. But they've got it resolved. But I'll be honest with your point. Yeah, that was a good opportunity because you brought Spoon into your server. You brought him into here,
Yep.
and there was an opportunity for Spoon there to actually, to help us out and be a part of an actual. I don't want to use the term movement, but to actually support the cause. And he just was not responsive at all. Try as you did, by the way, to accommodate the schedule to where he could be on an episode of the King's Council.
Specifically him, not just including him, but like I was willing to twist every limb for him, and he still couldn't even bother to fucking respond.
Well, you know what they say, never meet your Oshis.
Yeah? I mean, to be honest, he was never like some icon of mine anyway. But yes, you are true. Or that is true.
From what I know, from what you were talking about with how the bigger monarchists either don't interact with, I guess, people like us, or, I guess, rarely talk about monarchy at all. Part of it is mainly, while they are monarchists, I guess, privately, publicly, they're more like any other content creator. They're there to provide content and basically get.
I don't get paid. Why don't I get paid?
We pay you in bananas.
Oh, bananas, huh?
Don't you do it.
I'm gonna do it! I'm gonna go bananas!
I would laugh so hard if you actually did for real. Like something actually set you off, and
Like crash out.
the other, like the rest of us are just like, what should we do? Should we just cut the stream?
Banana crash
I don't think that
Sure
would ever
is.
happen. I actually know how to keep myself composed. So if I do get frustrated, it's like, okay, I know that it's probably time that it's not a good idea for me to continue. I know that in my head I should just end, try to end the segment and then basically just stop the stream once I'm done, It's what I did after the Melanie Mac cancellation. Not my best
Melanie
one. I'll
Mac.
probably be canceling her again in the future, but in the meantime, I'm just going to at least say that at least say that to you guys, that way I would never truly have like a crash out moment unless I'm heavily exaggerating something for the camera.
But continue with your speech.
That was actually the end of my notes there, but yeah, I noticed in the chat you wrote, see, he is drunk, he's praising us for once. Dude, come on, like, I'm not that hard on you guys. I'm really not.
You fed hard.
I never watched
you-
that
you-
show, actually. Most 90s kids did, but I didn't. Anyway, my overall point is, and I've said this before. I said this way back in whenever I published that video on starting monarchist societies. I mentioned, I didn't dwell on it, but I mentioned my issue with Spoon then too, which is not so much him, but that the rest of us revere him way too much. And honestly, I still kind of see it to this day. It's been a few months. I still see it. And I have to wonder, like, why the fuck is this guy so revered? Why do we look up to him? Why are we always asking his opinions and shit? B,
I haven't.
B, for
I don't
example.
think anyone has.
I was just about to give an example. B, like, saw that, like, Spoon posted something in the server. I don't remember what. And then B was like, oh, hey, Spoon, you're here. How are you doing? I've never even seen B speak that way toward anyone. But when it's Spoon, he's just suddenly, like, a fangirl.
I wonder if they're friends or something.
Doesn't look like it.
Like, I don't know, maybe they met IRL or something before, and
B is in Greece, and he has his ups and down days.
B?
He's a, us-
yeah, B Fumo. Cool
Oh,
guy.
usually
B
he's always-
Fumo, great guy.
yeah, usually B's a bit busy trying to not get recruited into the Greek army.
Oh, is that mandatory?
Yep.
Yeah, it's mandatory
That's too
there.
bad. Korea's the same way.
The thing is, even though he's been exempted from it,
And
no
as
job
well.
will hire him.
You know, I have a friend from Greece. I guess
My-
that's why he's gone.
My overall point, though, is, and it kind of goes back to, like, the fact that we're monarchists. Like, we should be behaving in a certain way. And I think it was last night, or maybe the night before, I don't remember. I posted my biggest gripe with monarchists in general, both our elites, quote unquote, and the rest of us, is how do we still not have any sort of leader? We just have these elites that we worship. Okay, not worship, but
We look up.
Venerate,
for
to
some
use
reason,
orthodox terminology.
for some reason, look up to, who don't give a shit about us. Aiden doesn't give a shit about us. Spoon doesn't give a shit about us. They don't give a shit about us. They just
I
happen
don't
to.
think we.
They just happen to be. They are big. I guess it depends on your definition of big, but they're bigger than us. Content creators who happen to be monarchists. But they don't give a shit about us. Why do we look up to them? I honestly wonder this. I have poured my everything into not only the movement, but you guys in particular. You know, this podcast was kind of a culmination of all that. I believe in you guys. I believe in the cause. That's what I pour my energy into at my own detriment. The fuck does Spoon do? This is not personal to him. I'm not, like, trying to be a gossip girl here. Like, this is going to be public. You know, he's free to watch this when I post it. This isn't personal at all. This is, like, purely as a monarchist community. What the fuck do we see in this guy? He's not useful. I remember I learned this term when Trump, like, during Trump's first term. I think it's called catch and kill. It's something magazines do, or media in general does this, where there's a story about, like, some kind of scandalous story, and they, like, some big outlet, some company with a lot of money spends a lot of money to buy all the rights to a specific story. Only they can report on it. And everyone else, if they try to, they'll get sued. Only they have the right to report on it. And then they proceed to not do that. It's catch and kill. They catch it so that they can kill it. So that they can just bury it. Spoon does that with monarchism. He leads people to monarchism. He talks about it once in a while. And then he proceeds to do absolutely fuck all with it. Sorry,
Blueballs people.
I'm getting a little emotional. It's probably the alcohol. But he leads people to monarchism, and then he does absolutely nothing with it. He's not a leader, by his own admission, by the way. He's not a leader of any kind, and he's also not a follower. Have you noticed that? Like, can any of you picture him following someone like that? Be honest with yourselves. Like, if we gathered around somebody as monarchists, someone to lead the movement, truly lead the movement, do you picture Spoon following that person?
I mean, if I if I have to be honest, I kind of mostly just picture Spoon with a bottle of alcohol off in the corner somewhere.
Me too. Yeah, I picture that too. This is like this is the first time you guys have ever like heard me being drunk. Spoon's drunk all the time. He's just a drunkard.
Well, hey, I'm a drunkard too. I'm just being bitchy right now. Even though I'm actually completely sober for this. I'm not lying.
For once it's not you and it's me.
Yeah.
But you guys see my point? Like it's not that like, again, this is not personal toward any of them. And I don't want you to think it's just Spoon I have an issue with. It's our entire among the community elite class of monarchists. All of them fucking useless. And I think that's also why we don't really have anyone leading the charge, because the people we would logically look up to lead the charge don't. Very intentionally don't.
Yeah, I think it's because they kind of end up falling into the internet rat race of, oh, we have to stay relevant type of mindset.
Yeah, I don't mind that, like, they have to make a living, obviously. Like, everyone does. Okay, fine.
It's just that they focus too much on it.
Yeah, they can do more, though. That's my point. They could easily do a little bit more for the cause if they actually stood for the cause. I think Spoon is not truly a monarchist. There, I said it. Because if he was, he would stand by it a little bit more than he does. I think he's a monarchist only to the extent of, this is what I use to show people I'm smarter than them. That's it. I think that's all monarchism means to him.
I mean, it's not like he hasn't made videos on monarchy before. Like, maybe not some of his more recent stuff, but...
Scurvy, it's been about 2 or 3 years, if not more, that he's done anything pertaining specifically to monarchy. It's mainly been like Western political stuff.
Fair enough.
And he can make a living however he thinks he needs to. Like, I've noticed myself with my monarchist content doesn't get a lot of views. Okay, it's not the best way to get popular and to make a living off of making videos. I get that. But he doesn't do anything is the problem. Not even the minimum. There is a minimum. He doesn't even reach the minimum. He doesn't... How often, like, does he even, like, shout one of us out? Any one of us. I'm the staunchest monarchist I know of. When does he shout me out?
Well, he better be there for my re-debut. Damn if it's like 4 a.m. He better be there for my re-debut next year.
He won't. I'll just give away the plot for you. He won't.
No. I will cope. I will keep on coping.
But again,
I will not.
He's not a leader. That's what leaders do. They stand behind their people. Yeah, we're much smaller than he is. Fine. But do a little bit more than nothing is all I'm saying. And he can't do that, and he never will. He will listen to this. Still won't change. No. That's why I'm saying, like, fucking abandon this guy. He's worse than not helpful. He is detrimental. All of them are. But Aiden's a woman. That's a whole other rant in itself. That's why I don't direct that much heat toward Aiden. When it comes to like what all of us as a community, like who we look up to, it's mostly Spoon. And I have to put my foot down and say, guys, stop. He is making us worse. He is getting this movement fucking nowhere, like a catch and kill. He leads people to monarchism only to kill their hope in monarchism.
But who's pro aristocratic or Spoon? Who is pro Spoon? I don't know who you're talking to. Does anyone really like? Because my impression on him when I watched him was he's like Brett Cooper. I mean,
dude, when he reposted something you said, you fangirled out. Come on.
Oh, fuck you! No, I didn't. I said, hey, I said, let's go. I do that with everybody, bro. Do you know who follows me on Twitter? people with hundreds of thousands of followers. I say let's go to all of them. He has 50,000 on YouTube. I count that as a W because my stuff gets out. It's not because he talks about cultural issues. I asked him about the juice once. He said, I'm not drunk enough for that. I've critiqued it before. Who cares? Like, he's Brett Cooper. He's like a male Brett Cooper. He talks about the same issue, gives the same take. And by the way, I've talked about this before. I've said this plenty of times on my streams. I find annoyance with people who talk about the same exact thing every time. I've seen his videos. Here's the thing we gotta see. He just talks about the same stuff. Like, he's not really original, and that's why he's popular. It's always the people who spin out content. He has a team with him. It's not him alone. You are mostly alone. You know, you don't have your own team.
I'm completely alone.
It's like, yeah, I'm just saying, who really cares? Is this guy shifting any conversations? Is this guy really that important where we have to have a whole discussion about him instead of doing our own thing? Like, honestly, why are we obsessing over this dude? Who actually likes him? The purpose of why I, was happy that he may repost my stuff and promote me is that I can have a platform. I want a platform from him because he has a big following. I see him for subscribers.
Well, maybe at the very least, you'll realize now that didn't help very much, getting reposted once. And more importantly, he certainly won't stand behind you. He's no leader. By his own admission, he's no leader. But that's the problem. Like, we all deny it all you want. Like, most of our community looks up to him, and he's no leader by his own admission. Just mathematically, it's got to stop. He's holding us back.
I honestly like Lavadar more.
He's holding us back.
This is why I like Lavadar.
To build up on what you were saying, Archeosophy, when you said Spoon could do more, you are correct, because if we just look at what you do, you release, a video practically every 4 or 5 days?
I try, yeah.
Yeah, and then Spoon only releases, looking at his thing, once a month.
Have you ever watched a Cheeto?
Well, you mean like monarchist content, right? Not his content in general.
Well, I mean content in general. It's just, you're doing it, this often. And he's doing just a video once a month. He certainly has time to fit in even just one monarchist video along with all the rest of his stuff he does.
Yeah, but it's also not even entirely that. It's also like he doesn't back any of us. He doesn't say, like, here's a monarchist, follow them.
Shout out at him.
When the fuck does he do that? This is what I mean by minimal shit. Minimal. I should stop drinking because I'm clearly getting too worked up. I'm usually more calm than this. But
yes, you're right.
Yeah, minimal shit.
The minimal thing would just be like to hit the repost button. So
it's not even just about us either. For all we know, there could be another group like us out there somewhere trying to make an actual push towards monarchism. And we would never know if he or any other monarchist influencer would be aware of any kind of other group like them, since we don't hear about anything from them either. So even if it wasn't us, right, the fact that they've shown an unwillingness to just shout out a bunch of, let's face it, as far as the internet's concerned, as far as the world's concerned, we're nobodies. But we're nobodies with a cause that they supposedly support and could throw weight behind to help. And it doesn't seem to matter whether it's us or not. It's just the fact that they've shown that to be the case, to not really do anything with their monarchistic views. I'm empathizing the whole not about us, just because I know there's some pedantic schmucks who's gonna make it about, oh, you guys are just salty because you guys aren't getting famous or you guys aren't getting traffic. No, we're salty because the movement's not getting any traction.
If we wanted to be famous, if we wanted to be famous, we wouldn't talk about monarchy at all. It's clearly not popular. It's not about being famous. Fuck that.
Well,
That's what it's about.
Yeah, I'm honestly with you there. I was gonna be a little facetious, but I actually do believe that it's like, damn if I get anything out of this. I want people to hear my message, and part of my message is that monarchy is based. and that this is the form of government we should be going for. I'm not shy to mention it on my streams. I actually mention it quite often on my streams, and it also seems to be quite the damn good filter for tourists.
Yeah.
And to build off on a good example for what Autist was saying, what do you, I guess to use her as an example, what do you think of Sinnoh and the Accords Discord archaeosophy?
What do I think of them? What do you mean?
Like, what do you think of her, like, seeing as she is a monarchist, do you approve of, like, what you've seen of her talk in the Discord? And, on your answer, I'll go into, like, the details.
Well, I mean, she seems pretty based. My only reservation is that she's female. But from what I've
Femoid.
From what I've seen, though, she's pretty based.
Okay. But basically, apart from the female, I guess, problem, you approve of her, and like Autist was saying, the only reason we know of her is because I'm not sure if it was Lamented or Spoon, but one of them brought her into the server. So, like as he was saying, we otherwise would never know of even her if she wasn't pulled in.
Oh yeah. That reminds me of a point. I thought of this when you said it, and then I forgot about it until now. Okairo, you once told me, because I've brought this up to you one-on-one, like in private, and you said, like, Spoon brings people to the cause, and we carry them the rest of the way. And as soon as you said that, I thought, that reinforces my point even more. That Spoon, like, he basically relies on us. I don't think he even gives a shit, to be honest, but for the sake of argument, he relies on us to do anything with it. To do anything with people he brings to monarchism. Because if it was just left up to him, like I said, catch and kill, he destroys people's hope in monarchism. Because he leads people to it, and then he's like, well, no, I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I don't think we're ever going to have a king. I don't think the West is going to be monarchical in our lifetime. Catch and kill. Kills our hope in monarchism. It's us who give people hope. It's us who lead people further.
I mean, it's not going to be in our lifetime, though. Be honest. This is going to be a 50-year war. I don't care. We'll do it anyway.
Look, I will live until 80, but I will see it.
It doesn't matter. Who cares? It doesn't matter if it's in our lifetime. That's like
That's woman
think about
shit.
everyone from
like
hundreds of
saying,
years
like,
ago.
oh, this isn't gonna happen in our lifetimes, therefore we should just give up. That's woman shit. And that's another problem I have
agree.
with Spoon. He acts like a woman more often than not. I won't get into that.
He does speak to them more often.
Uh-oh. That's probably getting into some...
There's that too. All the shit he says about women, and you only talk to them. You're not even consistent, dude.
I mean, you could also say the same about you could also say the same about me. I mean, a lot of my friends as of late,
Scurvy,
my VTuber pals
Scurvy,
are.
You're talking to us right now, so no, it does not actually
yeah.
apply to you as much as it does to him.
Yeah,
well, I mean, I do. Yes, I know. I'm just saying. A lot of my VTuber pals, because VTubing is a female-dominated space. It's like, I mean, yeah, my compatriots are gonna be women, but it's not like I'm hitting on them or anything. God, why the fuck would I do that?
Because you'd only do that if you want the sex pest allegations.
Which I don't. Honestly, I just think a lot of them are cool people to talk to, so that's basically it.
No, I don't think you're an apples to apples comparison here. Like, yeah, maybe you do, but as you said, the thing you do is very female dominated. But you still talk to men. You follow us, you shout us out. You know how long it took? Do you know how long it took Spoon to follow me? And again, people are gonna fucking say, including probably Spoon himself, that this is all personal for me. No, it isn't. I'm a true believer. That's what you're seeing. True believer energy here. Do you know how long it took Spoon to follow me? A year.
I was keeping track.
A year. I've been spewing like monarchist shit for a year in his eyes. That's how long I've known about him. Only like until last week did he finally follow me.
And to talk on that just real quick, he only followed you when he had that little kerfuffle with Aiden.
Yeah, so maybe
And
it
the-
was
and the-
only done like out of like some emotional shit or something. Probably wasn't even genuine. Yeah, probably.
And the moment they get back together, he's all of a sudden unavailable again.
Yep.
Here's the thing: it doesn't even matter if Spoon turns out to be right, where it does turn out to be a hopeless endeavor, and Monarchy really never comes back. Even if he ends up being right, the fact that he's touting monarchism in any way at all, regardless of that, it's kind of hypocritical, isn't it? To want to promote something that you don't think has any chance of being prevalent again.
Well, yeah, like
And
I said,
that really goes.
I don't think he promotes it to promote it. I think he promotes it just to only under the limits, the parameters of this makes me look smarter than you. That's his brand, is looking smarter than people. That's how he gets clicks. I look smarter than people with a fancy voice. I don't think he actually gives a shit about monarchism. But that's just me.
I want to hear your opinion on Curtis Yarvin. Like you mentioned Curtis Yarvin earlier. I want to hear why you think he's not a good guy.
He's not that bad, but he's also not. Okay, my argument with all of this, all of it, is our elites, the elites among the monarchist community, they're not helpful. Because if they were, look, we're monarchists. What does that mean? We believe, like, our entire fucking ideology here is about leadership. Which one of these people is a leader, one, or two, following a leader? None of them. Not one of them.
They're
So
complacent.
my issue is that they're not helpful. They are almost aggressively not helpful. As if not quite this bad. Not quite, almost. But almost as if they go out of their way to be detrimental. At least in the case of Spoon, that's certainly how it seems from everything I've assessed.
Hey, Arch, look in the chat box.
Yes, I know Curtis Yarvin
Yes,
is Jewish. There's also that. I
We
was
know that,
going to
Bennett.
save that point
We
for
know
the
that.
last, and here we are. So my issue with him, not as big as Spoon. He doesn't lead people to monarchism just to kill their hopes in it. But yeah, he could still do more. He does have an audience size enough to do better. And for all of these people, Aiden, Yarvin, Spoon, all of them, the Virginia philosopher, whatever the fuck he's called, the Oracle of Virginia, they,
Call him Ketchup Hines.
at the very least, yes, Christian Hines, at the very least, they could fucking promote one of us who actually believe in this and actually make it our, daily cause. They could do that once in a while. They don't. So just like in real life, our elites as a community are a problem. Just like in real life, just like in the greater scheme of things, the elites are the problem.
Well, even if, let's just say that that any of them may have come across, because I don't know about you, Carol, but I'm not currently a content creator, so I can't exactly put myself here. But let's say they came across some of our content and deemed it not worthy of promotion just because they didn't deem it as good content. You know what they could still do then, if that was the case? Give feedback.
Yeah,
If
they
this is
can
a cause they really believed in and they recognize people aren't maybe doing as well as they could, there's always the feedback factor that we could then use, well, you guys can use to then improve on yourselves to, better convey your messages or your points. And do they even do that?
Exactly.
No.
That's also what I mean by the minimum. They can't do the minimum.
I mean, even when Archiosophy posts on X, if I see it and I think I can add on to it or inform him of things he might not know, I do that.
I'm still working on that bit myself, trying to get a little more knowledgeable. But that's what Archiversity, what you were giving us credit for is that all of us here, we're here because we're trying.
Yeah, and that's why I gave you guys praise. You deserve it. Whereas someone like Spoon deserves harsh condemnation. And we need to... I almost said this earlier and then I kind of forgot. But Okairo, part of actually like relating to what Bennett said, like, oh, who cares about Spoon? Well, clearly some people do, because in the server, in the Accord server, Spoon, he isn't just part of a list. He has his own list. He's just simply the Spoon.
Yeah.
He is his own list in the server. That's how much we care. That needs to stop. By his own admission,
Well, there
he's
needs
not
to
a leader.
be there needs to be a list for me named the Orange. Yeah.
I would rather have that.
And then Spoon would be like, "Oh, this Orange, I'm his Oshi, which means I have a responsibility to provide him with content."
Hopes and dreams, Scurvy. Hopes and dreams.
Yes. It would be like if Pipkin Pippa was like, "Oh, hey, it's Scurvy. I know who you are."
Poor Scurvy's like, Senpai, please notice me. Archaeosophy is bringing us to a very, very important issue.
Don't worry, I could at least maybe get Mari to leave a like on the post of this video if the topic of monarchy ever comes up. If anything, I talked to, in terms of the Face Connect talents, I talked to them about monarchy. Well, at least with EP Sleepy, because I made a joke about how she should be absolute monarch of Isle Delfino, because she's a big fan of Mario Sunshine, and so am I. So there's that. And I'm still trying to tell her that, she needs to rule those Piantas with an iron fist.
And already you're doing more than our community's elites, as Archaeosophy is.
Come on,
You're already
Spoon.
doing.
Like,
You're already doing more than
give up on him. Like, I don't think it's like a conscious effort. I don't think he's trying to be detrimental. I think it's just who he is. Like, I've heard him say, I don't remember where, but at some point I heard him say, like, when he was a kid, he was a loner and he preferred it that way. He's just very standoffish by nature. Okay, fine. Again, like, I'm not saying he has to change his personality, not saying he even has to change his content, but we need to fucking stop looking up to him in any way, treating him like he's anything close to special or anything close to a leader, which by his own admission, he's not.
I mean, in the few times I've talked with him,
on top of that,
kind of the way he prefers it.
Yes, and on top of that, whoever it is, not saying it's me, but if it is, I'll do it if I have to. Like men should step up if no one else will, but we should follow somebody who is worth following. We're monarchists. This should not have to be explained. All right, I think I've said everything I possibly can on this subject.
Yeah, this was the big one you've had saved for weeks.
Yeah, kind of like a volcano. It's just kind of been building up pressure for a long time, and then boom. Yeah.
Well, what happened is, a rock covered the top of the hole in the volcano, and that rock was the whole Boone and Aiden, going apart with the broken crown fiasco. And now that they're back together, well, the rock's been lifted. No more lead on the volcano. Boom.
Yeah. Now that they're back together, fuck it. Here we go. Oh, by the way, it's Fireball. I didn't actually tell you guys what the answer was. It's Fireball.
That might explain why you're getting heated.
Oh, you're fine. Okay.
Yeah. It's not my favorite, actually. My favorite is Kahlua, which is basically just coffee, but fuck it. It's still my favorite. Not saying I'm some expert in getting drunk. Never said that.
But yeah, to finish your point, Spoon himself doesn't see himself as a leader. The times I've talked to him and occasionally brought it up, he's only ever said, "I'm a propagandist."
He's not even that.
He's not anymore. But, he's repeatedly said that he doesn't like people, I guess, looking up to him and, I guess, the way people do. He just finds it weird.
Yeah, and I understand that too. Like, I've been trying to say that during this rant of mine. But, again, 1, he's a man. 2, he has a big audience. 3, as a man with a big audience, he has some responsibility. Some. Like, step up, dude. Do a little bit more than nothing. but it really is nothing. It's too much to ask for him to repost us more often. It's too much to ask for him to just throw any kind of weight behind the movement, which is why I conclude he doesn't actually give a shit about monarchism. He just uses monarchism to look smart. I hope I'm wrong. I honestly do. I want Spoon to be useful. That'd be great. That'd be heavenly. But he's not.
Maybe in some twisted irony, he'll see this and decide to prove you wrong.
He is that type of guy. He does like proving people wrong.
Or just bitch about my points, which I see coming. Fucking bring it on if you want to make this a fight.
Or he could do that too.
I don't even see that really. See, I'm not entirely convinced that if he ever sees this, he'll actually say anything about it. Be a fart in the wind.
It's one or the other.
All I want Spoon to say is, Scurvy, I know you recognize me as your Oshi, and I'm here to provide for you. Thank you for your continued support, Mr. Scurvy Rum. Signed, Aristocratic Utensil of HoloLive EN.
Scurvy, do you realize? And I don't mean this as an insult, not at all. This is not an insult, but do you realize you really are the jester of our court?
Oh yes, oh yes. I fully realize that. I embrace it. I embrace that. If I'm being honest, I embrace
what you're saying before, though. Wouldn't that make him the first male member of HoloLive if that's how he wrote it?
Well, I want to be the first male member of Phase Connect. Spoon, on the other hand, Spoon. In my twisted little mind, I have him be part of HoloLive.
Okay, that's pretty
oh man.
I admit I don't really know what you guys are talking about, but I'm sure it makes sense.
It's a VTuber or it's VTuber groups, VTuber corpos.
It's weeb nonsense. You don't have to worry about it.
Oh yeah, I've seen this, Bennett. What you're posting here, and I'll post it in the video later. But yeah, I've seen that. That's true. Jesters are underrated. They're more important than you'd think. Especially for like what we do here now in 2025, like very serious subjects. Like we kind of need someone to just lighten the mood once in a while. I think of Curvy. I almost called you Curvy. Holy shit.
Curvy. Oh, Curvy Rum. That's a new one. Jesus Christ.
Oh my gosh,
So, pardon my retardation there. But Scurvy, I do see you as a sort of like counter to me, because whenever I open my mouth, things get way too serious, and so you balance it out.
And I guess when I open my mouth, I can't help but just be the court jester.
I mean, people like you more, so I mean, it can't be all that bad.
Oh, really? Well, shucks. I mean, I didn't think I was all that all that in a bag of chips.
Well, what I meant was like you have a bigger following.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I do try.
Maybe you've been doing this longer. I don't know, but
I've only been a monarchist for I've only had my X account for almost not so I'm getting close to my 1 year anniversary on X.
Technically, I've been at this for 3. Not with monarchists.
As for my time on YouTube, I've been doing this for almost 5 years.
Yeah, that might explain it then. I haven't been YouTubing for 5. I'm almost at my 1 year anniversary for YouTubing. So, I don't know. Maybe it's because you've been YouTubing for 5 years. But honestly, my content has sucked ass for a while. It wasn't until like last year when I was like, you know what? It was actually because of Spoon that I was like, the way he I could do something kind of similar in terms of format, but obviously my takes are going to be different than his when it comes to like certain topics, mainly all the ones I've covered so far. Yeah, I really wish like he leads people. he points people. I'll call him that from now on. He's a pointer. He points you in the right direction, but he certainly doesn't lead you in the right direction. He just kind of points. Just go that way. And some people do, but then they get lost because he's not with them. And like Okairo said to me in private a while ago, like, I have to be the one to come and like carry people further so they're not lost. But at least he does point people places.
You mentioned in one of your earlier videos, Archaeosophy. I don't remember the name of the user because I wasn't really on X at the time. There was another guy who tried doing just this, and he got no following, I believe is what happened. He ended up giving up on it because it wasn't going anywhere. If you remember who I'm talking about,
Reality
who you
Bomb?
mentioned. I think that was his name.
Yeah, I think you're referring to Reality Bomb.
Yeah, well, I bring him up because the worst thing that can happen if we don't go anywhere with this is, well, as I think we've mentioned as well, we don't really even know if this is something that, as far as God's plan for the world goes, is even meant to happen. So if it's not, pretty sure we'll know.
But here's the way I see it, is even if, like, I kind of feel like Spoon wants it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. He kind of doesn't want it to go anywhere. He doesn't want monarchy to happen. He'd run out of things to talk about or ways to look smart. But even if it doesn't happen within our lifetimes, hell, maybe even if it doesn't happen ever again, we believe in this, so we have to fight for it. Not every soldier who dies for their cause, for their side, gets what they wanted in death. Like one day, the thing that they died for happens. Doesn't always happen that way. But you still got to fight anyway. You still have to die for it if you truly believe in it. But let's say it does. We don't know the future. Let's say it does. We have to plant these seeds. Okay? Every tree has to grow from a seed. Maybe we don't ever get to sit in the shade of these trees. Probably. We still have to make that sacrifice, though, if we really believe in this. We still have to do it. We still have to man up, fucking do it. We won't benefit from it, but we have to do it. That's the way I see it. And it just goes back to how I kind of see Spoon as a woman in so many ways. He just gives up. Like, I don't think this is going to go anywhere, so I'm not even going to try. Fuck off. Really. Seriously. Fuck off. Believe in something. For fuck's sake. Believe in something. I'm done.
Yeah, even if it's not in our lifetime, we should still plant the tree so when it does grow, our kids don't have to suffer as we did.
Exactly. But he doesn't have any kids. So maybe that's part of the reason he doesn't think he has to give a shit about the future. I have a kid. I think some of you want to have kids someday.
Eventually.
So the future matters to me, at least. Okay, let's get started.
Jews?
Jews?
Yes.
Where to begin?
We're going to talk about God's chosen today.
Where do we even begin with this? There is so many antics that those people have been up to for so fucking long.
I wanted to
Even in the days of the Old Testament, and it was documented in said Old Testament, the Jews were constantly failing God, and they were so much for them being, God's chosen when they can't even make God happy,
I think I have a good place to start. The Talmud.
Oh,
yes. I think this is a very good start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do not believe in the Old Testament. That's something that should be made immediately known. They do not follow the Old Testament.
Well, to state this, as Lamenta does bring it up, as he's read it, I think more than most people here, it's less religious book like the Bible and more a set of different rabbis stating their opinions on it.
Yep, that's also true.
But they still follow
However,
it, though.
Yep, they still follow it like a religion.
Important. Yeah, it's still important to them.
I remember a clip from Ben Shapiro. I never caught this, but I watched the video in 2021. I didn't remember why, but then I rewatched it and I found out something. Ben Shapiro talks about the Talmud. He says it's a very important textbook in their history and their education, and he talks about the Talmud in his videos. In his presidential one, he said he doesn't like everything about Harry Truman, but he said because of what he did, you know, he thinks Harry Truman's like really up there because they helped the Jewish people. Then he said something about the Talmud's very important with religious texts, and Ronald Reagan, or one of the presidents, was supportive of it, so he gives them a little upper. And then he talked about, oh, the Talmud's very important with our religion. This is an Orthodox Jew. Many of them, PragerU, I think the owner of Blaze TV, many of them find importance with this Talmud.
You brought up PragerU. I actually have a couple of stories I'd like to share, if that's all right. So a couple stories. Firstly, since Bennett brought up PragerU, now I had the mindset growing up, as many do growing up in a conservative family, of the Judeo-Christian ideals. There's Judaism and there's Christianity, and they're different, but they share the same foundation. When I used to watch PragerU, I used to watch the fireside chats that the I don't want to say he's the owner, but he definitely I mean, it's named after him, Dennis Prager. He's the guy
Mossad
who
agent.
PragerU wrong. Yeah, probably. I don't know
We
that
know
for
he
certain,
is.
but
It's a fact. It's a
okay,
fact.
I'm not denying that, Ben. Okay, Bennett, I'm not denying that, but I am trying to get, to a point with the story, and I still have another one to share.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And there's
yeah.
no, it's okay. It's just I'm not saying he isn't. That's just not something I would have known at the time when I used to watch Prager University. So, PragerU.
Hustlers University.
Hustlers University. So,
Hustling
so,
Jews.
all right. There would be a few things he brought up that I didn't think much of at the time that should have been huge red flags to me. Like, for one, he mentioned that it should be okay to kind of acknowledge that other people have different ways of life, even if they don't live our values. It should be okay to, allow people to, to have dinners with them, which I'm not against, sharing the gospel and having good relations with people who don't necessarily share my values. But he mentioned as an example that he would totally be okay with letting gay couples come over and be around his kids. For one.
Ugh.
Yeah, I didn't think much of it at the time, but that's something that I've realized now is a huge red flag. Another one is he doesn't believe in hugging his children or giving any affection towards them. Again, this was years ago, which of course, I've never been a parent, so I can't attest to this personally, but as a parent, your children need affection amongst other things, such as discipline and guidance. But they also, if you are, if your children, look up to you, they also want your approval. You don't give them that by denying them affection when it's worth it, when it's worth rewarding. And so those are just a few things. And then a couple years later, where I'm at work, there's a new coworker who gets hired on to be one of the assistant managers where I'm working, and he's trans. He's a troon, a man trying to convert as a woman, who had apparently served in the military to get whatever benefits he needed to afford, the surgery, where he supposedly
Ugh.
fought in the Middle East. Oh, yeah, hold on, I'm not done. So we got along fine, but I can, for the most part, get along with anybody if I need to. That's, with a few exceptional people here and there, that's me getting along with people, never been a problem. So we got along all right, but he was about what you would expect to deal with someone who was a troon in the workplace. He was very abrasive, no one else could stand him. And this is a very liberal work environment. So you have a chick who's having sex with half the guys there, and just all that depravity is just accepted in the workplace. But something he brought up is he tried using Judaism as an example to justify his choices, which I didn't believe him at first, because again, I was on the Judeo-Christian mentality that they had more similarities than differences, and he brought up the Judaism confirming 6 different genders, and this was back in 2021 when I first heard of this. Again, it's something that I didn't really think much of. I thought it was some leftist troon trying to pervert, Judaism, as they would try to pervert Christianity. But of course, now I know. Now I know it's the opposite. That is, in fact, not the case. Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to share those real quick, since those are the only personal examples I can think of that come to mind in regards to the Talmud, which, come to think of it, that one coworker did reference.
So it is.
So there's been
important to them.
signs in my life for sure in regard to this.
So it is important to them.
Yep. Here's the thing, and I have a lot of credible sources for where I found this stuff, but if you look into what the Jewish religion believes in, it's very, very liberal. I remember looking up, why is there a Jewish rabbi that owns Pornhub? And same thing with OF, same thing with every single one, Tinder.
Oh, I was wrong about that, by the
What's
way.
the one, Grinder? You know what they said? This is coming from a female Jewish woman who's from Israel. She said, in our religion, in the Talmud, it's sex positive and it's about experience and pleasure and learning, which is the same excuse they give to sex education? It's the same excuse, which makes you think they're connected. But to the main point, I'll just make the main point here. You know, this religion is very sex positive, very liberal, which is why we saw, for example, in Hollywood, where it was very liberal. They showed nudity. They were trying to push this stuff. And they had this, if you read what the Hays Code Production Act had, it had more than just nudity. It was also about you can't destroy the moral characters of people. You can't present bad as good and good as bad. You can't do that type of stuff because that was a problem that was happening in Hollywood. Very liberal, very explicit, very very similar to today even, just maybe a little bit more diverse. But then again,
Exactly
they did
like
show
today.
race mixing. That was the thing in the Hays Production Code because they added things that were happening. So Hollywood was very similar to today, and it's ran by the same people. A lot of them are like throughout family lines. But I'll just conclude here. It said that the reason why this happens and people notice is anti-Semitism, which that's all of them. They all say that. It's anti-Semitism. Oh, it's
Yo-
white people and Christians that are just evil towards them. And then it concluded with saying that maybe it's okay and maybe even it's morally good if a Jewish person owns porn.
Yeah, you just remind me of something else Dennis Prager said as well in another. I think this
Yep.
one was in one of his videos, and he was trying to justify a man looking with adulterous eyes at another woman while he's married, and he kind of brought up the fact that when a woman is dressed in a provocative way or in an immodest way, many men often find themselves drawn to them, but they, even though they possess the will to look away, to look at only his wife, he tried to excuse that as something though the wife should be able to acknowledge and recognize just because an innate part of the male condition. To which the correct argument is, if you find yourself looking at anyone who is not your wife, you look away. It doesn't matter if it's the carnal state of man. Gosh, there's a direct verse somewhere that says that the natural man is the enemy of God. Sure, you're being a normal person, quote unquote, by looking at another woman as a married man, but that doesn't make it good or virtuous or healthy.
I believe he also said that AI porn is not bad because technically I'm not porn of people. And
What?
it's just like okay,
Who
maybe don't have
said
to quote me on
this?
that, but I believe Prager he did justify, which is what they always do. I mean, this is a very common thing. They have over 100 commandments,
cigarette.
and they find ways of going over it. So they find justifications, and we see this with porn. I know for a fact he said this. He said it's not inherently evil. It could lead to some bad, but you got to have control.
Wait a
So he said
minute.
pornography, as long as it's in control,
What?
just like the religion.
Hold up.
This is in the Talmud.
Hold up.
Goodness me.
It's all connected. Yes?
Is Dennis Prager even a Christian?
No, he's Jewish.
No, he's Jewish.
He's a Jew?
Okay.
That's where we brought him up. That's where I brought him up. at least.
No. I thought you brought him up.
You are drunk.
I thought you brought him up because he's Jewish, like ethnically Jewish. I wasn't sure what
Well,
That's like
faith
Trent
he
Horn,
actually.
another liberal Christian.
He's actually like Jew.
Yeah, he's full Jew.
Yeah.
He works for the Mossad. He was paid by the Israeli agents.
So
Hey, real
why
quick,
do we consume any of his content?
I did. That was the first thing. That's what made me political.
And that's what I was saying. I don't anymore. Once I caught on that
Yeah.
fact that something just wasn't right about things they were saying. Akario, want to go ahead and read out what you were
Figure
texting?
you created me.
Okay, because I do apologize on my behalf at least for being so wordy, because I do think what you type in there is worth saying. So go ahead.
Okay, so what I was going to chime in is that Judaism and Jewish culture is matriarchal, which,
Yes.
as you can tell just by what you two were talking with the porn and everything, they use a lot of terminology that banks on emotion, things women do. So it's kind of obvious they're using the arguments from a woman's point of view and bank on women pushing all this in terms of they get what they want and all that.
I see. Yeah.
Another interesting thing I learned: who do you think converted to Judaism in an effort to fight against Christianity and conservative values?
I'm afraid
Marlon
to ask.
Monroe. Marlon Monroe converted to Judaism, the leader of the sexual revolution. She married a Jew. She was pro-Israel, and she played in a movie showing transgenders directed by a Jewish man. What was the name? 1959.
Oh, Some Like It Hot?
Yeah. Some Like It
Yeah, that's
Hot.
what I was
Yeah,
thinking of,
the
but I
director was
haven't seen it.
Jewish. The director was Jewish. Marilyn Monroe married a Jewish man. She converted to Judaism in rebellion of Christian conservative values. The civil rights movement was led mostly by Jewish intellectuals. If you look at the communists that came to America, they completely influenced America to go in that direction.
Yeah, we should.
It's just obvious.
We should, as great as it is to keep listing things that Jews have been involved in, not against that, but
Luther was pro-Jewish.
We should.
He went to the Wailing Wall.
Oh, that Roman fortress?
He said you're anti-Semitic if you're against Israel. Look it up. Martin Luther King Jr., it's a quote from him. If you're against the state of Israel, you're anti-Semitic. He said that to a group of students.
That's okay.
I mean, that's
Same thing
technically
with,
true, but I don't care.
I think a good place to start is addressing who exactly they are. I mean, it may seem obvious to us, but for any who are uninitiated, it'd be helpful to know some of the. Well, really, we can stick with the biblical history for the most part, and the rest of the history explains itself.
Basically.
Yeah. So who wants to tackle the history? I know the basics of it, but not like the finer details.
It just depends on what point of history you want to talk about. It's such a vast subject in terms of just how long this has been going on for, so to speak.
Well, I know we
You could-
cover this topic after recording, but because it was after recording, it never there's no file of it that could be its own video. So if no one else minds, why not kind of recap? Well, really, where they come from, and just a lot of the reasons for why we have the conflicts that we do with these people. So, biblical history, and of course, I'm also going to skim some details, for brevity. So, first of all, people should understand what is and what is not a Jew, right? So, a lot of Christians who are pro-Zionist, they may make the argument, that the Bible's about Jews, or most people in the Bible are Jewish. And there's other videos that cover this in detail, so I'm recapping a lot of what other people have said as well. But from my reading, you have the Hebrew people who come from the line of Shem, who I believe was Noah's eldest son. I could always be wrong about a lot of things. So if I'm missing any details or get stuff wrong, by all means, lampoon me for it. I don't know why I said that. That's not even a word. Anyway, so you have Abraham, who was promised that he and his wife could have children, and they basically waited. Only the Lord really knows how long. Because I'm sure the exact years are somewhere in Scripture, but I don't remember. The point is, you had the whole Sodom and Gomorrah fiasco, which involved Lot, who I believe was Abram's brother, as Abraham was known at the time. But basically, Abram and his wife, their reward for Shem was likely the oldest. Okay, yeah, that's a better way to put it, Archaeos. He was likely the oldest. So, to sum up a bit of biblical history there, Abraham's reward, his reward for their waiting, because his wife couldn't conceive. And that remained the case until long after Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, and they had been separated from Abram's brother Lot. And they were rewarded, and it's why we call this the Abrahamic blessing, is that he was blessed to be the father of many nations. And that's a blessing that carried down to his son Isaac, the very same Isaac who he was told to sacrifice, only to not have to sacrifice just because, because God was trying to prove a point with him, just to set an example as to what our Heavenly Father's sacrifice would be, for Jesus Christ to be crucified on the cross and suffer in the Garden of Gethsemane for our sins and our ills. That was the example that was set with Isaac and Abraham. Isaac, and I know Abraham has he had another son as well, probably some other children, but not really important to the story. But who is important is Isaac's sons, particularly Esau and Jacob. Now, it's worth noting that Esau was originally going to have the Abrahamic blessing that was passed down to Isaac, but Esau ended up giving it up to Isaac. I think there was a bowl of porridge involved somewhere there, but a detail I remember is that Esau was particularly hairy, and because Isaac started losing sight in his old age, he was able to defer between his two sons by Esau, who had much hairier arms, and Isaac not so much. But Isaac's wife knew that it was Isaac who should have the blessing. So she helped him put on essentially wool or fur. I don't remember the exact. So that he appeared as Esau when Isaac called him forth to give him the Abrahamic blessing. Which, as I said, there might have been a bowl of porridge involved where Esau gave up the birthright to Jacob. And then, of course, Esau went and made wives out of a couple of Canaanites and an Ishmaelite, who was a descendant of Ishmael, the other child I mentioned who was not really important earlier, that Abram had, Isaac and Ishmael. So now Jacob has the blessing, and he is renamed Israel. That's how I'm going to pronounce it from here on out to differentiate from the secular nation state of today. I'm pronouncing that Israel and the Israel of the Bible as Israel. I think that's something I think we should all do to help differentiate between the two. Pronunciations usually are helpful in that way. And then you had Israel, Jacob, and I'm going to gloss over the story of how he got his wife, since that's a story in and of itself, but you have two sisters of a man who Jacob wanted to court one of the sisters, worked 7 years to win her hand, but on the marriage, when it came time to marriage, he was revealed to have won the hands of her older sister instead. So he worked another 7 years and got the woman that he wanted to be with, and then he also ended up taking both of their servants, and I don't remember the names. And between them, his first wife, Jacob had 6 sons, of which Judah was one. I believe Judah was the fourth born of those sons. And then with his other wives, you had 2 sons each from the woman who Jacob/Israel was trying to court initially. You have Joseph and eventually Benjamin. Now, all of his sons were expected to work very much jobs that you would expect men to work out in the fields, just being help around, maybe the house when they were younger, but around their property. And they all had what we would essentially call blue collar jobs, basically. They were the working men, except for Joseph, the youngest brother at the time. And here's a misconception I want to clear up, because people talk as if Joseph was the favorite son, and he may have been referred to as such, but Joseph was that way because he was different and Isaac knew it. So he brought him up differently, which played to Joseph's strengths that we would see later. But anyhow, Judah is most jealous of Joseph, and he rallies and he gathers all the other brothers, his brothers, and they get Joseph captured and sold into slavery to the Egyptians. And then from there, Joseph has his whole story where he eventually becomes the hand of the Pharaoh. I believe the term prime minister may have been used in some translation. And that whole story ends with Joseph, helping Egypt there during the 7 years of plenty, or the 7 years of famine, which brings people from all over to Egypt for refuge, including the rest of Joseph's family. And you have that whole debacle with Benjamin. And it basically ends with Judah bowing to Joseph, an apology for what he had done. And then you have Joseph's 2 sons, since remember, up until this point, from Abraham, renamed Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, renamed Israel, the Abrahamic blessing has been passed down to one son. This time's a bit different, since by the time Jacob, Israel, is on his deathbed, or at the very least very old, Joseph has two sons of his own, I believe with an Egyptian woman, Ephraim and Manasseh. And Jacob adopts Joseph's sons as his own and passes the Abrahamic blessing to both of them, Ephraim and Manasseh, the two tribes of Joseph, of which one of them would have belonged to Reuben had, I believe it was adultery Reuben committed, which he lost that birthright. And the reason why it was Reuben, because he was the eldest of all 12 brothers. He was the oldest. So that's why that second birthright would have been his. Why not then one inheritance for each brother then? Because another one of the brothers, Levi, and his descendants were not given an inheritance, but were tasked with being holders of the priesthood, which is where you get Moses and Aaron from. They were Levites. They came from that tribe. And if you look up different diagrams and sketches about what the camp of Israel looked like after they fled from Egypt, through the Red Sea, the Levites were placed as the center, as it was their duty to be the priest, or the priestly class of the Israelites, where you have the other 12 tribes, including two of Joseph's, laid around outside of the tabernacle. The thing is, Joseph's children and Judah's children never got along. Not even after Judah supposedly made amends with Joseph by bowing to him in Egypt. And that's where we get the separation down the line between the northern kingdom and 10 of the tribes that keep the name of Israel. The southern kingdom, which consists of the tribe of Judah, who were supposed to be the rulers of Israel, by the way. That was the task Judah's children were assigned, to be the ruling class. But of course, because they never got along with mostly the Ephraimites, but Joseph's children in general, they end up dividing into those two kingdoms. And worth noting, the second tribe to be part of the southern kingdom was the tribe of Benjamin. And that's where we get, I believe, all of the apostles were Benjaminites. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you get those kingdoms where you get Israel taken into captivity into Assyria, and then 150-ish years later, Judah gets taken into captivity into Babylon, both due to wickedness and unrighteousness and not heeding the word of the Lord and his commandments and everything he had laid out to them, which, by the way, the Israelites were notorious for all throughout the Bible, disobeying God at every turn. And it's on that note that I want to address the concept of chosen people, as that's what the Jews call themselves. It's what people who are pro-Zionist call them. They are the chosen people. When anyone says that, they neglect to bring up, or perhaps unaware of, why they were the chosen people. It was not just the Jews, it was the Israelites. And the Israelites were the chosen people to be an example to the rest of the world of what God has planned for all of us. I could probably go a bit more, but I think I've been ranting long enough. Did I anything I missed that could be relevant to this discussion?
Oy vey, Goy. You missed the fact that we of the secular state of Israel, we are God's chosen people, even though we're not even even though by blood we're not even from the region. We're actually from Poland.
Ukraine.
Oy vey.
Oh, right. Right, I cut myself short. I forgot.
Yeah, you totally missed the part
I
where
just
they
realized-
just teleport to Poland somehow.
Wait.
Yeah.
Wait.
Sorry,
There's something I wanted to
Yeah,
explain.
go.
Monarch Autist. I don't know if you just forgot this point, but this usually doesn't get talked about a lot. But where are the other tribes? Those are the Europeans.
I was going to get to that.
Yep, exactly.
Hold on, Bennett, slow down. Let me get to it, because I was talking for so long. I thought I was almost done, and then, which thank guys for remembering. For remembering and reminding me. No, there's a lot more to it than that. You have the separation of the kingdoms. So here's the deal. There's not actually anything that for sure. There's not anything to my knowledge that for sure confirms without a shadow of a doubt that modern day Europeans, or their diasporas, the white race, are the descendants of the 10 lost tribes. We don't know that for certain. That is conjecture, but possible. Also worth noting is I don't think it's accurate to say that only modern day Europeans and whites are descended from the 10 tribes, as that ignores that one of the many things God had commanded them to do, which all the Israelites disobeyed not every Israelite, but people from each of the Israelite tribes had disobeyed, was mixing with other people. So it is absolutely possible that people who have ancestors from ancient Israel can be found all over the world. Just hypothetically, if you
Yes.
account the possible movements and migrations from different peoples during
There was
the time of Kingdom of Israel. So yeah, it could be
only two
just as
tribes
likely.
stayed, correct? Only two tribes stayed. The
Well,
other
no,
ones
two
mostly
tribes. No,
migrated out.
no. They were captured out. The 10 tribes never returned. It was the two, Judah and Joseph, not Joseph, sorry, Judah and Benjamin, who did. And by the time they got back, there were other peoples, including their ancestral enemies, the Edomites, the children of Esau, who I alluded to earlier, married 2 Canaanites and an Ishmaelite. So, on the topic of why is all that important? Well, it's to recognize who the Jews are today. And Jew, as a word, is a loaded term as it refers to the people of the tribe of Judah, the people of the kingdom of Judah, the people who were converted or converted into Judaism, which includes Edomites, and then, of course, the fourth factor, which may be a combination of the previous 3 peoples or their own sect entirely, like how they magically got a blood strand from Poland, they who say who are Jews but are not Jews, as Christ
Yep.
points out in Revelations. Which, if we're going to go with the idea that Europeans are some of the descendants of the 10 lost tribes, actually, no, sorry, I had my own thought on that. The idea that the Jews with Polish blood may be the actual ones, and it's the others who say who are not Jews or not. But again, that's even more conjecture on my part than just even bringing up
Think about
what's
this.
out there.
Well, no,
Wait, Monarch Altus, think about this. Wait, think about this. So in Daniel, it talks about there's going to be 10 nations that are going to unite together as the kingdom of the north. Do you know what those 10 are all? It's very likely that, because in the prophecies, and by the way, we see they did track the migration of many of the tribes. It's mostly in Western Europe, not countries like Germany, Poland, Ukraine, Russia, or even Italy. But do you know what is kind of funny? What I discovered.
What?
The countries that are
Alright.
likely the 10 toes, most
tribes?
of them are Jewish. Yeah, the 10 toes. You know, like, have you ever seen that
Oh.
chart? The golden head, that's representing Babylon. Then you got like is it iron, or you're representing like
Oh, you mean from
the Medes and Persians?
Nebuchadnezzar's dream?
Yes, yes,
That-
for
that,
Nebuchadnezzar's dreams. It's prophecy. You know, read Daniel and Revelation. To my research, the 10 that are likely going to be like united as the new Roman Empire resurrected, and they're going to fight the kingdom of the south. Read Daniel 11 and 12 if you're curious. They're probably likely Germany, Poland, countries that are more in Central Europe or in Eastern. But what do you think those countries are the most like compromised with out of all the tribes? Judea, Germany, Poland, right? Austria.
So you think those
Mostly.
nations are Judea?
Are you talking about Germanics? Like Germanics
Yes.
are a tribe?
Well, no, I'm saying Judea compromises has the most composition in those countries that are likely going to be the 10 toes. So I'm saying Judea could play a piece of the prophecy. That's all I'm saying, as the kingdom of the north.
Oh.
Because they mostly compromise Germany and Poland. I mean, you know, look at almost all the Jews in America. They all have Stein or Berg at the end. Those are German Jewish. Same thing with Poland.
Okay.
Chicago's
Something
compromised
not
Polish Jews.
okay. Something you're not considering though, Bennett, is if we're going with the European Israelite theory is true. Again, it's really conjecture for the moment. If we're going with that topic, you're leaving out how many of those peoples was also consist of members of other tribes. If you remember, Judea was one of the 2 southern tribes. They were captured into Babylon, a southern empire. Assyria was the northernmost empire in that region, and there's no records of where the members of the lost 10 tribes went after that. Not anything for Saul, because I'm pretty sure any records that would have kept those were destroyed in either the first or second temple. I don't remember which one, because the Jews had the records to those.
So you guys are actually going off on a completely different path than where I stand, which is, and I think I've said this before, maybe during one of our previous meetings, but where I stand is basically the Old Testament is one giant story of how the Jews kept disappointing God as his chosen people. And certainly not the main reason, but part of the reason Jesus came was because God was just done giving them chances. And so, as I think Paul said in his letters, this promise went to the Gentiles, because basically the Jews blew it. But also Jesus, when he was here, he said, I've come to fulfill the law, not to abolish it, fulfill it.
Correct. And he fulfilled it all right.
And Paul
Just
himself,
to put it lightly.
yeah, and Paul himself said that, like, directly addressed this, saying Christians inherited the promise of Abraham. Christians. So blood hardly matters anymore. So I think, I don't know the verses exactly where it talks about, like, tribes and where these tribes come from and what they're going to do eventually. It could be that God just changed his mind. He just said, all right, none of that. You guys are just disappointing me way too much. So when I send my son, he's just going to change the plan. Maybe. I'm not enough of a scholar to say that for sure.
Well,
But
Danny and Revelation aren't changed.
But I do know.
They haven't changed.
But I do know Christians are God's chosen people. That's in the Bible.
Yep.
Period. Fucking period. And also,
That's true.
last thing, the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, just a few years after Paul died, by the way. So whatever he said about the Jews, I don't think it's entirely relevant. But temple was destroyed a few years after Paul died. When the temple was destroyed, not only did they lose their temple, they lost their priesthood. Without any priesthood, you don't have Judaism. And last I checked, the Jews of today, whatever your opinion of them is, they don't sacrifice sheep or lamb anymore, as far as I know. Clearly, something changed, and it's clearly not biblical how they practice things today. And for me, it lines up perfectly with what Revelation says. People who say they are Jews and they are not, lines up perfectly with that, because the way I see it is they're not real Jews anyway. That religion is gone. It was fulfilled, and then it was physically destroyed. So who are these people calling themselves Jews? Go ahead.
Jesus predicted the destruction of the temple. There's a verse, I think, from Matthew. Yeah, somewhere in Matthew or John, and Jesus does say, "Hey, this temple will be gone, and there will be this new change that happens." They killed him, and the punishment happens with there's a rebellion in 70 AD, and what happens is they destroyed the second temple that got built, and that was their punishment. And you also see their name changed, and they kind of lose all they had, because they used to at least have some kind of territory, but the Romans renamed it to Palestinia, Syria, Palestinia. And then afterwards, this is what actually makes the great controversy, and I've done a very extensive research. This is what makes the controversy of the Jewish people, because afterwards you now have this era where they essentially become more of a stateless people. And that's what made them so dangerous, because they became what would you call a transcontinental people. They were not national. While everyone else, and by the way, that's what Goyim was supposed to mean. People with in a country, state-filled people. They use it as a slur, but that's the original point of what Goyim was supposed to be. So what they've done is they work all together transcontinentally, and it gives them a massive boost over other countries. They practice their own religions. They're only loyal to each other. They take out the ridges of the coins to make more. They do
Coin
weird
clipping.
traditions. Yeah, coin clipping. They do weird traditions. That's why they were kicked out of 109 countries. Well,
111. Yes,
I know,
111.
That's why they were kicked out of so many. It's because they're transcontinental. They're not loyal to anyone else. And they drain the country. Look at Spain. Spain didn't have the golden age until the very year they kick out all the Jews. So that's kind of the great controversy with them. They're transcontinental. They're not loyal to a single country, and they're kind of selfish. Like, they put themselves above everyone else, and they call everyone else anti-Semitic.
And don't
Do you
forget
know
that
where Oh, sorry. I just posted a meme in the general chat, and I assume you guys know what I assume you know the phrase "poisoning the well," right? Do you know where
Poisoning the
that?
well,
Yep.
yes.
Yes. Do you know? I assume you guys know where that comes from. The fact
Bolshevik
that
Revolution.
yes, and do you know? I assume you know about the Bolshevik Revolution and how
That's what I
that
said in school.
and how that basically tried to and unfortunately successfully did undermine the rule of Saint Tsar Nicholas II.
Yep.
I'm on the edge.
That
of my
was
seat.
a
Well,
that was a very the Bolsheviks are crafty motherfuckers in regards to in regards of how they managed to seize power. It was very, very underhanded tactics that are just completely evading my mind right now.
Well, they work
I don't know why
together
this always
with all the
happens.
communities. They worked together with transcontinentally to create. They wanted to turn Russia into their own state because there was a lot of Jews in Russia. It failed because communism, of course, was just an absolute failure. The Holodomor occurs. You get the millions of Ukrainians dying. They don't really care, you know. And then Stalin's not Jewish, so he purges them out later on. And that's where we get this switch up where all these communist Jews, they suddenly become neocons. And then you have the founding fathers of neoconservatism you have this complete switch up because the Soviet Russia started siding with the Middle East. That happens in the 50s and 60s. So this is kind of an interesting switch up. All these people who led the civil rights movement within the 70s and 80s switched to the Ronald Reagan types. And that's where you get neoconservatism. They kill off the paleocons. You know, now we see it's not only just they push liberalism, but it's also they killed off the right. That's the thing to keep in mind.
Yep, infiltration. So it might be a little bit off topic what I'm saying, but it does relate back to what we're talking about in regards to infiltration. Do you guys know? Do you guys know if any of y'all play Warcraft? You know, Warcraft 3 or World of Warcraft. I assume you got. For those who. If I assume you guys know who the Dreadlords are. I drew this fucking comparison. Like a few years back, it's like, holy shit, the Dreadlords are literally Jewish. They act like Jews.
Okay. Hold on a second, because I didn't go into that whole tirade about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and about that whole family lineage for nothing. I brought them up for a reason. I was alluding to, and Bennett brought up, the white Israelite theory for a reason. There's a reason I went through all of that, including addressing the Edomites, the children of Esau.
Well, yeah, I wasn't.
Because where is all this
trying to undermine you? I was trying to say that, like, from my perspective, it used to matter, and then it did basically change, and now they're trying to go back to that because it's advantageous. So I wasn't trying to undermine you.
No, I understand that, but I think something to notice why I even brought up the whole blessing of Abraham. Because you have different interpretations of how the world would be blessed through Abraham. My personal opinion, that comes through Jesus Christ, since he is not from the loins of Judah, but through his, through Mary's spouse Joseph. He was basically adopted into the tribe of Judah through Joseph, since, as we know, Jesus is the only begotten, and was begotten through Mary, who, as far as I know, wasn't even an Israelite, or even a Hebrew for that matter. I don't know that for sure. But the whole reason I even brought that up is, as much as Judaism is about bringing the world under their heel, they have a very specific target, a very specific group of people who they have labeled as their sworn enemy.
Christians,
and it's worth addressing. Well, not just Christians, because you have that religious enemy, but you also have their racial enemy, white people.
I gotcha.
I get, again, some of this is scripture, a lot of this is conjecture, but if true,
but it is based on actual historical events, though. Like, you could see time and time again, they keep trying to undermine specifically majority white countries. They're not trying to do this to African nations or Middle Eastern nations or India and it's only recently they started doing this with like Korea and Japan.
Who created the NACCP or the NAACP?
Well, that's the thing.
Who created BLM?
Well, Scurvy, you brought up
Jews.
all those peoples, but those are the people that are being brought into white countries to the Western world's detriment, amongst a whole bunch of other things. But remember what I said about the children of Joseph and Judah. They never got along. That led to the split of the kingdom of Israel into the northern kingdom, the north 10 tribes of Israel, and the southern kingdom, the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, to be a part of the kingdom of Judah. That's how you got that whole split. So as I was saying in the conversation we had, that was after one of our recorded episodes, if all of that is true, this is just Joseph or Judah versus Joseph all over again. Or remember what I was telling you about the Edomites, who were already there in what would be later Syria, Palestina, after the Judeans, as I'm going to call them, being of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, were freed from Babylon. And the Edomites, the children of Esau, are Israel's sworn enemy. So it's if all of what I've said, both what we know from Scripture and what is currently conjecture, is true, it's Judah versus Joseph, Esau versus Israel, all over again. And I believe there's a scripture, I wish I knew the exact one, where it says something along the lines of, Jacob is the beginning and Esau is the end. I'm definitely paraphrasing that, but if anyone can find that, then let me know where that is. That's something I wanted to bring up.
So this is going to be a bit in regards of current events. So did you hear that the patriarch of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church got stripped of his citizenship?
Yeah, I heard that.
I want,
That was
since we're
Zelensky,
talking,
right?
yeah, since we're on the topic of the Jews, I've been storing some video bookmarks of all the shit that's been going on in Ukraine in regards to just like how Zelensky is basically just trying to make it into another Israel. I'm so glad that yes, Zelensky is a Jew, yes, but I am so happy that I saved so many of these. And I could finally talk about them here. So I've just got to scroll down just a little bit more. But basically, they have these things called in Ukraine, and this is pretty recently, mind you, that they have these things in Ukraine called religious checkpoints, and you will be barred. I believe it's like you will be barred from passing if you are not Jewish. I just have to scroll down a little. I know it is here. I just need to scroll down. Oh, yes. So Ukraine has set up checkpoints only allowing Jews to pass through. Does anyone else find this to be odd? That's what the video was captioned. I could send it to you here.
Not surprised.
Not really.
Eastern Europe is compromised with a large amount of Jewish people.
Yep, a lot of them are in Eastern Europe. And then also just something else for the viewers who don't know. So who is the tyrant Zelensky? So he banned the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They have been the Orthodox Christians in Ukraine have really been going through a lot of shit in Ukraine, as they have been in Syria. Though I don't think any Orthodox have been killed yet, and I really have to emphasize the yet, because I could tell for someone like Zelensky, he is biting, he is patiently rubbing his hands and going, oy vey. He certainly would want to do something about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church if they continue to defy his will. It's almost like Zelensky is trying to speed run the canonization of our next saint. I could put it like that. I'm not trying to mock the process of becoming a saint or anything. I'm just saying it's like if Zelensky wants to kill him, well, per Orthodox tradition, he will become a. You're only making your own cause worse, Zelensky, because you have made a martyr of a very influential spiritual figure in Ukraine. Is that what you really want? But continuing on, he has exiled Ukrainian church leaders. He banned political opposition parties. He also jailed political opposition leaders. He also banned members and jailed members of his own party. and he has also banned and jailed members of the media who criticized and or opposed him. And then he also he is just one power hungry motherfucker. And the reason why he's doing all this, it's for the, you know, his overlords. He wouldn't call himself a goyim, but he's certainly doing their will.
Doesn't surprise
That's
me,
what's so funny.
given his behavior toward Trump. That entitlement, like you behave this way toward the guy you depend on most. I can only imagine how you behave toward people.
You will feel our Jewish circumcisions. You will feel.
Is he a practicing Jew or just ethnically?
He has so the Ukrainian military rabbi reveals that Zelensky has a personal seat at the main synagogue of Kyiv. Zelensky's name is clearly visible. This is, of course, not surprising. Zelensky is definitely not a Christian. He is a practicing Talmudist. That's from Dmitry K., formerly known as Orthodox Canonist.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me.
People also forget.
Not to deviate. I'll try to say this real quick. The Talmud itself, to me, is proof that they're bullshit. Like Judaism,
they're evil.
As we know it since 70 AD is bullshit. Why would the Talmud exist if it's legitimate? They wrote the Talmud, and as I think it was Autist who said, but as most people know anyway, it's basically just rabbis writing their thoughts down as far as like, what should we think, what should we do? Why would that be necessary if your religion legitimately still existed? It doesn't. You built it back up from nothing.
That's what O'Kyra was saying about something Lamented Guide had pointed out when he was reading. The thing with Zelensky, though, you know, the funny thing about his hubris, he really is the embodiment of the Jewish attitude towards trying to replace white people in their own nations. And of course, assume they succeed and the white race is gone and the Jews are the palest people left on the planet, they're left with the rest of the world, the Gentiles, who all hate them.
Really comes down to like just one simple question. No matter what you
Christians
think.
Too.
Yeah. No matter what you think of Hitler, either way, love him or hate him, you have to ask the question, why was he fixated on the Jews? And you can't hide, you can't fall back on he just wanted a scapegoat. If he just wanted a scapegoat, what an interesting pick. Why not go after any other ethnicity, he could go after an age group, for fuck's sake. It's the old people. He could just say anyone who's like 60 or above, they're the ones who trashed our economy. Why did he go after Jews? Why did Stalin hate Jews? Like, just ask this question, like, why is this so consistent everywhere? And Stalin and Hitler, obviously, hated each other. They went to war with each other. They agreed on this.
Hey, Ark, it's because they wore hats. It's because those little hats pissed everyone off. That's why they were trying to kill them all. And they were evil anti-Semites. It's because
we worship differently, Goy. That's all.
It's because of Anne Frank. Which, by the way, Anne Frank did write the journal.
Okay, no, if this is gonna go on YouTube, well, I can't say what I'm about to say.
Fine, we'll move on.
It's not going on YouTube. It's going on Rumble. I decided that before.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, in that case, yeah, Anne Frank definitely did write that book. That was her dad.
Yeah, that was her dad who wrote that book.
You positive?
I've been waiting to.
You
yes.
Are we talking about the invention of the
No, let's go.
I remember certain
the invention of the ballpoint pen. The invention of the ballpoint pen. That book was written in ballpoint pen. That type of pen was not invented until the 50s. There was that was the biggest discrepancy in that whole fucking thing, was that it was written in ballpoint pen. And then also in terms of historical discoveries, every now and then we get, suddenly there's new pages of Anne Frank's diary, but it's like, no, that's not how historical discoveries work. Like, you know, especially for something that is ultimately, in terms of, you know, human history, is something that is a pretty recent find, so to speak. You don't just suddenly find new pages of something just out of the blue. That doesn't That doesn't happen with modern, I guess, so to speak, like modern pieces of historical documents. That doesn't happen.
I do find it interesting that Holocaust survivors don't age.
There's
I noticed that
over
too.
200,000 too. There's over
They also keep
200,000
growing.
survivors.
They also keep
Yep.
growing.
And
I'm
there's
not
they
one
call
of
it
those people.
secondhand.
I'm not someone who thinks the Holocaust didn't happen. I think it obviously did, but it is interesting how they keep being more survivors and they don't age. That is
You think the
interesting.
Holocaust happened?
It did, but
Yes,
not
I
the,
do.
but not the way that it was. So a big thing with us Orthodox Christians, we actually do kind of have some, I wouldn't say like, doctrine or whatever, because it's not doctrine, but a lot of us kind of come to the agreement that it's like, it happened, but definitely not the way that they told us that it happened.
Yeah, obviously
It's
not
definitely
from
not
their perspective.
It's definitely
obviously
not 6 million.
But,
Definitely
like-
not
Yep,
6
and
million.
they predicted the number, by the way.
To say that like
They
Hitler
predicted the
didn't do
number.
anything, because that is the argument of Holocaust deniers. Like Hitler didn't do anything to them.
Oh, he did.
Fuck
He did
off.
stuff. He did stuff
Clearly
for
did.
sure.
It's that.
Yeah,
That's
to say that he
stupid.
didn't is a lie.
But
To say that he didn't is intentionally lying.
Yeah, their narrative
will
about
say
it
he
though, is
did
also
stuff.
bullshit.
I will say that it was true that, like a Holocaust did happen, but I think we all agree here it wasn't 6. It probably was more like 4 or less.
No. Do you want to know the actual number and the cause of death?
Oh, a lot of them were
271,
starvations.
271K and typhus. Typhus, my friends. Typhus.
Well, you see, you know what's
Yep.
funny? It's not even about how many died in the Holocaust. It's that they can't seem to keep a consistent figure as to how many did.
Yeah, it's
Dershowitz said 4. Then they found in the 90s that it was actually 1.1. The figure
and
never changed.
then also 271K actually that is the most appropriate number, because there was also like some images of like population almanacs, I believe. There was one from before World War II that had the number of Jews be like 1,300,000 something thousand. And then at the end of World War II, in that same almanac, it had Jews it actually had a slightly higher number than, it's not like 2 million or anything, but it was a lot more than, you actually saw an increase in the population, not a decrease. That should be of note. And the reason why it might sound crazy at first, but then it's like, that actually does explain perfectly that it wasn't 6 million. It couldn't have been if the number like, no way then that they would breed such rabbits that they could somehow get those numbers from 1,300,000 something thousand to negative 5 million something, and then all the way back up to 1,300,000 something. 1,400,000 something thousand.
Yep.
I mean,
And
it's
by the way,
also
too,
just out of pure logic, like it doesn't quite make sense, because I've seen many pictures of Auschwitz. I don't think you can fit 6 million people in there across 5 years. And
Or the other camps too.
There were
It's
other
impossible.
camps, obviously, but like, do people realize how much 6 million is? Like, have you ever seen
It's a lot.
You ever seen a big concert, just like a really big concert, and then they tell you how many people are at that concert? It's like 50,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
fun fact. Do you know why? So, do you know why there can never ever be like any sort of archaeological study in places like Auschwitz or Dachau? Do you know why they can't do that? They're museums. They're museums. They made them museums, and why would you want to do an archaeological survey on a museum? Am I right, guys? But yes, like what Monarchical was saying, it would disrupt their narrative full-heartedly.
Now, I'm not one of those, like, I still get into arguments with my uncles who are just, we're all on the same side here. But like, one of my uncles says like that it just never happened at all. in any way. And like even like Auschwitz like had a pool, and that just like some of the arguments I hear, I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? Look, there's not just two options here. Like either believe the narrative entirely or don't believe any of it. Like it's obviously in the middle. Okay.
There's a lot of details that are uncertain.
And 6 million is just such a massive number for a very specific group of people who don't. There's not that many of them in the world. There's not very many of them in the entire world. And you think 6 million of them died in one continent alone?
Okay. Let's see. So I'm currently looking up the most populated cities in the world. So if this particular study, World Population Review, I've never used this site before. So it says that as of 2025, Tokyo is the most populated city in the world with 37,036,200-ish. Right? That's supposedly the most populated city in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
We're supposed to believe that in the between 1930s 1940s, where the world population
Just hold on.
was
Bennett, is
not
that you?
even two.
Bennett, is that you? What's that sound?
It's a smoke. It's the
All right,
smoke alarm
hold
beep.
on.
Bennett is black now.
All right, he's muted now. Go ahead.
Where was I? Oh yeah, most populated cities in the world. So like I said, so that's a big number. 37 million people for the most populated city in the world. That's big. But this is in 2025, where we have about 8 billion people on Earth. We didn't even have an eighth of that during World War II before it started. And we're supposed to believe that 6 million people were gassed or incinerated or put in masturbation machines or whatever. And, well, gosh, how do I even put this? In a country that was at war on all fronts, on top of the population issue.
Yeah. So that's why my
They've
stance
had to be
is
pretty darn resourceful.
Yeah, that's why my stance is they certainly tried, but they weren't that successful with it. I don't think that's all that controversial.
Or at the very least, they try to contain them. But that's being very charitable.
Also, there's the I keep forgetting the name of this. The Havera something. Anyway, point is, the Nazis tried to emigrate them. The Nazis tried to get them out of their territory for like 6 years before all of that happened. But there were still 6 million casualties. Like, a lot of them did leave.
Yeah.
Einstein was one of them. Albert Einstein. He was one of the Jews that left before the Holocaust got started. And there were still 6 million? I don't think so.
Oh man, you mentioned the masturbation machines. And I'm just like, how the fuck does anybody believe that? Just seriously, why? Why? That's so absurd. Well, how do they even work?
I'd have to ask my mom about this because, she keeps a whole bunch of stuff about the Holocaust and World War II, mostly approved narrative stuff, of course. But even amongst that stuff, from the little bits I've seen with her, I don't think even those documentaries bring up something as absurd as masturbation machines. That's something I discovered recently as being, and that it may be just a meme that got out of hand, but the point still stands. Just some of the absurdities, like throwing Jewish babies into the air and shooting their heads and watching them flat against the wall.
What the fuck?
Holy! I shouldn't swear, and I've been trying not to, but holy shit!
It's so fucking absurd. Like,
have you ever read Night?
Yes, I have.
Yep, that was a propaganda book in my 10th grade, 11th grade. No, it was 9th. Yeah, freshman year.
Has anyone ever watched The Pianist?
I have not.
I haven't.
So that is a movie I remember watching. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the only part of Night that I remember was they were dumping babies by the wheelbarrow full into holes in the ground, like as they're still alive. I don't know. I could kind of see that happening. but I wasn't there. I don't
Context.
remember anything that absurd from Night. The baby thing was
He
the only
lied.
thing I remember.
He admitted he lied. There was a report where he admitted he lied about most of the details. But we have to still take it as fact because the emotions go over the factual basis.
Well, there's also stuff like Schindler's List, which is a movie I still haven't watched.
Chandler's
probably
List
will
is
someday.
fiction. It's based on a book. It's fiction.
Right. You see, I'm not inclined to believe otherwise so far. But I bring up the movie The Pianist because it is about, and I don't remember if it's supposedly based on a true story or not, but one of the scenes I really remember, keep in mind, very conservative Christian family. So me at 10 years old, I'm not around to watch a lot of stuff. My mom lets me and the siblings I had at the time watch it. And the scene that has always stuck out with me is you have the protagonist as his family. They're getting rounded up into a camp where they have like 4 or 5-story buildings. Apparently, I don't even know which camp would have that, or one of the places before they shipped them off to the camps, I believe. And there's an entire sequence about Nazi soldiers going to the next door building, tormenting a family, including ordering said family to stand up. And when an old guy in a wheelchair couldn't stand, they took him by his wheelchair, dumped him off, proceeded to shoot at them and chase them out the building. And then, as they were running around the highway, they would shoot at them and drive over them. That's the whole sequence, and the protagonist and his family watching in terror. I wouldn't put it past humanity, any human being, regardless of race, to commit that kind of atrocities. But at the same time, holy shit. It begs a lot of questions. I don't think I have much more to say about that. Just
Oh, do you remember the hair thing? They took everyone's hair and they made it chairs, and the gold tooth from the same doctor.
see, I actually remember. Suppose again, this is when I used to believe the narrative, and of course, none of us here believe it as is. We have our own questions and doubts about it. But there's another movie that was based off a book I remember. I wish I remember what it was called, but the
White
main
striped pajamas?
yeah, I've never seen that one. Now I'm thinking of what's the actress who played Mary Jane in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies? I don't remember her name, but plays the protagonist. And one of the climax of the movie before it ends is where they tell the ladies and they tell all the prisoners of the camps before they go into the gas chambers to strip. They take their clothes, they shave their heads, and then they gas them. Which, honestly, I bring up all of this because it's not that I don't think any of that is possible.
Were you saying that about Schindler's List? Sorry.
No, I was talking about a different movie based off a book that I don't remember its name. I
had to step away for a second.
I don't remember what it was.
I was going to say that did not happen in Schindler's List, and I actually think Schindler's List is shockingly nuanced, but that's just me.
Probably is. Again, I haven't seen it myself to verify that. It is on my movie list, so I do want to watch that eventually.
Yeah, but that's the thing we gotta understand, though. Why is it that being called a Nazi is the worst thing? Right? That's the thing they always do. If you ever fight back against the system, they always go first with, you're a Nazi. And the reason for that is they have to use the World War II narrative. The reason why they're so territorial about the Holocaust is because if the Holocaust never happened, there would be no way they could ever fight back on Christian nationalism. There's no way they could fight white nationalism. That's why they use it, because then you'll never, ever have Europeans stand up for themselves. They can always just go back to, well, yeah, I just said it, or Christianity. But
yeah,
they always do that. It's they just say, oh, but the Holocaust happened, so therefore you have to always feel bad, and you can't fight back, and you can't have Christian nationalism. You can't have white nationalism. You can't have anything to do with Christianity or white courage for your own people. That is evil and immoral. Yeah. That's the moral code in the system. They don't do it that blacks because blacks didn't do the Holocaust.
Well, it's not even just about the Holocaust in and of itself. We also have to consider the kinds of people who create the societies that the Jews find themselves leeching off of. And it's why I mentioned before, you have the racial and religious enemies, because not all Christians are white and not all white people are Christians. Christians are their enemies because they accept and acknowledge Christ as our Lord and Savior. We, as Christians, do. They reject him. And so the existence of Christ makes their whole religion really obsolete, if not without purpose to begin with. And then you have their enemies, the white race, since white people create the societies that they leech off of to create prosperity for themselves, and they may or may not also be descended from the other 10 tribes who rebelled against them and formed the Northern Kingdom. And many of the Jews today may or may not be Edomites who had a bone to pick with the Israelites since Esau got the Abrahamic blessing passed to Isaac instead of Esau. You know, a whole bunch of different factors here that most of which we don't know for certain, but some of which we do. And whether or not any of it's true, the most important part is the Jews themselves believe it. That's the most important part, that they believe these things to at least some extent. Maybe not necessarily the Israelites or Europeans theory, but they believe these things enough to justify their actions through those beliefs. So
Well,
that's where
they're
we see
afraid of the Roman Empire. They believe America's like the Roman Empire, and that's the one they're afraid of most. It is really just they're afraid of the Romans because the Romans were the first group that, defeated them, that humiliated them, that took their land away. So they associate the Europeans who have the claim, they're the rightful claim to the heir of the Roman Empire. You have to kill the Roman Empire or you will be gone. You'll be extinct. They're afraid of extinction. And I don't think Jews are evil. I think they're paranoid people and they're using that paranoia for very wrong actions. I think the only thing we could do is just we have to make it a Christian nation. That's the only thing we can do. We can't let them have power, but we should also be merciful and not cruel.
I think the most fair thing we can do about them, send them all to Israel, leave them alone. Good luck.
Khazaria. Not Israel. Khazaria. That's that little section in Russia that is dedicated to Jews. They should all fuck off to there.
I didn't even know Russia had such a place. But sure, yeah, there.
Yeah.
Just point is, send them.
They don't belong in Israel because Israel belongs to the Christians.
Well, they don't belong in the Holy Land. I refuse to truly call it that place Israel. But yeah, just send them all somewhere. Okay, you guys are all back together now. Great. Bye-bye. That's it. And if they survive, they survive. If they don't, they don't. It's in God's hands.
I've heard the idea floated that they should be sent to Madagascar. That's a pretty funny idea.
That was the first option.
I don't know, but all I know is that this setup's bullshit. You guys know Whoopi Goldberg, right?
Yes, unfortunately.
How she changed her last name to try to get more popular in Hollywood, and it worked.
A black woman. Like, if the Jews didn't control everything, like we keep saying they do, that's a common deflection. Like, oh, you're paranoid, but you want to blame someone. Like, then why would a black woman change her name to something Jewish, knowing it would work, and it did work, but it wouldn't work? Like, make that make sense. And also, like, every single, like, okay, not every single, vast majority of the names you hear of bullshit scandals, the most famous of them all in the modern day, Jeffrey Epstein.
Harvey
Weinstein. Like, fucking
Steen.
Evidence all around us, and we're told to deny it.
Steen and Berg and Witz. Every Stein, Singelberg, Timowitz.
Yeah,
that's how I say that on X all the time.
A moment ago, because Bennett brought up that he doesn't think they're evil. Which, by the way, Bennett, I agree with you in the sense. I don't believe most people are good, but that makes most people more so bad than it does evil. At least that's what I like to think, and it's what I tried telling you when you tried making the obviously we don't think this about every Jew's disclaimer you threw out after we last talked about this on one of your streams. I point out to you, we're a monarchist. We believe these conflicts are battles between elites and other elites. So it's not the Jewish people we necessarily have a bone to pick. It's their elites who have our elites in their pockets working against us. That's the important thing.
Yeah,
because most people across all demographics are sheep.
Yeah, my issue with the whole Israel-Iran thing that lasted only 12 days, arguably will continue at some point, but my issue with that was, like, why is America acting like Israel's bitch? I don't like either of these sides. I don't like Israel or Iran, or at least Iran's government. I don't want either of them to win. but like, why are we doing Israel's bidding? That pissed me off something fierce.
Yep. He pulled the chair for Netanyahu, remember?
Well,
Twice.
he also did that for India's president, so it's not specifically, it's not just for Netanyahu.
Well, twice for Netanyahu. I don't think he did twice for India's. But still, it just shows a moment of weakness, especially since Israel is causing these conflicts. India is not, in particular, bringing us to a war. Israel is. So I think that's a little important context, too. But you're right.
We should maybe discuss the fact that, like, okay, Trump is the closest thing we'll get to a genuine king in the world of democracy. What is going to happen when he's gone? Like, the closest, he's still a politician. I get that. Still a politician. I'm not saying he is a rightful king. But he's the closest we could possibly get to that in a democracy. What's going to happen when he's gone?
JD Vance, they're pushing Vance for the president in 2028. Just watch. Vance is part of the Peter Thiel alliance. So it kind of, if we connect the dots here, Vance is going to be the one that they're going to push. And they're going to push him as America first because they keep on making quote unquote leaks about how he is not for this war and it's a bad thing for America because they know that the base doesn't want these conflicts. The base will follow Trump, but they do not like these things. So obviously what we can tell, and by the way, he's been pro-war since until the election occurred. So he was for destroying Iran. So this is his belief. He wants to destroy Iran. The guy's a fake. They're gonna push him. He's a puppet. That's what we're gonna see.
Oh, Cairo, did I miss all the Jew conversation? I don't know. When did you leave?
About 45 minutes ago.
Oh. Yeah, you missed a good chunk.
Yeah, you missed a lot.
Yeah, we were talking about the Holocaust.
Yep.
I miss all yep.
Yep.
Scurvy, I'm blaming you.
I kept harping on
Hey!
the Judah versus Joseph, Edom versus Israel points, since I think those dynamics may be relevant in some way to everything they're doing.
I mean, yeah, it's certainly like the origin of basically all of this. Like, it's relevant. I think things changed, and I think God just kind of got impatient with his people, and now his people are whoever accepted his son. But just imagine, though, if they did not disappoint him so much.
So here's my thoughts about that. Since Christ was supposed to come and be the Redeemer for the world, say they didn't disappoint him so much, who's to say that through the line of David, for example, since that is what Christ has been adopted into through his, I don't want to say foster father or surrogate father, since that's not what Mary's husband Joseph was necessarily, but who's to say he couldn't still have come about through the kingdom of Israel, as was said with the Abrahamic blessing. And I'll elaborate more on the Abrahamic blessing later, since that has different interpretations depending on which Christian you ask. We know that he came to earth to be the Redeemer for all of God's children, both Jew and Gentile alike, I believe is how it's said. All who would come unto him. So you have that promise. And then you also have the other part of the Abrahamic blessing where I've just finished talking about the world will be blessed through his lineage. You also have the other one, which I listed as being passed from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Ephraim and Manasseh, is that they will be the fathers of many nations. Though the interesting about that is, as far as my knowledge is concerned, the blessing stopped being passed on after Ephraim and Manasseh. At least we don't have any further knowledge as to where that blessing got passed, unless, as archaeology has said, that has become, fulfilled through Christ. Through all will be blessed. And it's even said in scripture as well, there's no way to the Father but through the Son.
It just seems like, from what I've read, it just seems like Paul put a lot of emphasis on we are the promise now, those who accepted Jesus. Like, we are the promise now, and he says it outright in Galatians 3. I feel like there would have been a more literal, at least a little bit more literal fulfillment of the promise either way. Or, a little more literal fulfillment of the promise if God's chosen people hadn't disappointed him. You know, Jesus did come from the line of David. Luke and Matthew open pointing this out. They give the lineage directly. But everything that the Jews, like, even I've heard Ben Shapiro say, like, you know, this is how we envision the Messiah. It probably would have been closer to that as well if Jews, you know, if they had listened to God a little bit more. Moses was supposed to make it to the promised land, but he didn't because he disobeyed. He hit a rock instead of speaking to it. That one disobedience changed the story. I mean, it does happen. God keeps his promise, but he also changes exactly how that promise is fulfilled. That happened in the Old Testament. I don't know.
It's a two-way street with God, right? You know, he makes promises to his people in so much as we keep our end of the promises we make to him. So that's how all arrangements with God have been. You know, heck, with Abraham and his wife, I wish I remembered her name. They were
Sarah.
promised that if they waited, Sarah, thank you.
Yeah.
Abraham's wife's name was Sarah. They were promised that should they wait and be righteous, that they would be blessed with children. They held up their end after many, many years, all through the events of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were eventually blessed with being the parents to people who would form many nations. And also through him is where we get Jesus Christ, as far as lineage goes, through David, it was through Judah, and a whole bunch of people in between.
But I still stand by the belief that Judaism is extinct. The genuine, true Judaism no longer is. It was fulfilled.
There doesn't,
and it was destroyed.
yeah, there doesn't need to be for it anymore. Christ came in.
I don't even call
and defeated Hades, and we're all better off for it.
I don't even call it Judaism.
I wanted your thoughts, Scurvy from Markiosophy. Do you know what the Star of Raphim is?
Yes. I know what the Star of Raphim is.
Fill me in.
Is it
Fill me in, I'm
legitimate,
not
or is it
sure.
like actually low IQ? I want your thoughts.
It's absolutely what it is. There's no such thing as the Star of David. That's not a thing in the Bible, and not in the Old Testament, especially not in the New Testament.
I think the star, like, that stuff is really just creepy. And why would they even have any association with it? Like, even if they didn't intend it like that, the fact that they associate is just kind of like, you need to ditch that. You know, it's like if you have a symbol that resembles something satanic, then you need to drop that immediately. Why on earth would you even keep something like that? You know?
What I was trying to say a moment ago is I don't even call it Judaism, as that practice wasn't just, about Jews. It was about the Israelites, the Hebrew people before them. I personally call it Hebrewism, as that makes more sense than to call it Judaism. And it's from there where we get the split between Christianity, and then Judaism is what we have now, which is obsolete.
Yeah,
you got a good point.
There are the Hebrews, and then there is Judaism. Judaism is, when you really think about it, it really is quite literally this: simple rejection of Jesus. Continuing in the tradition of the Old Testament, not really, but rejecting Jesus. It's simple rejection of Jesus. Like believing in the Abrahamic promise, believing in all that, following that, again, not really, but rejecting Jesus. It really is that simple. If you were to do that after it was destroyed, after the faith was destroyed, which it was with the priesthood in 70 AD, what would it look like today? Well, exactly what we see.
And here's an obligatory reminder that the tribe tasked with holding the priesthood was the tribe of Levi. There wasn't even the Judites or Jews or any of the other tribes who held the priesthood. So they could only have it if they had Levites amongst their peoples, which, by the way, something I forgot to mention, is as the Levites were the priesthood holders, they were also encouraged to mingle within the other tribes. You would have Levites amongst the other tribes to hold the priesthood.
It's a very specific faith, and that is not what we see today and haven't seen for 2,000 years.
That said, my prayers still go out to the Jews who are part of who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Israel. All 230 of you.
Yeah, I do pray that they change, and I think that's the only way to answer the JQ. The only way to solve the JQ is by saying, yeah, either you have to convert to Christianity, find a moral code, go the right path.
And if they don't,
can't, then maybe go back to Israel. That's or wherever else. Just
fuck off back to Khazaria. The Holy Land ain't yours. Repent, become, accept that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, or fuck off back to Khazaria, because you ain't gonna have the Holy Land.
You want to know what's funny about Khazaria?
Yeah.
If it's where I recall it being on the world map, isn't that roughly the area where Abraham and Sarah ended up settling? Because if you remember, the Hebrew people, they don't originate in Egypt. Joseph, through contributions to helping Egypt prepare for the years of famine, people fled to Egypt to avoid said famine. Joseph and his brothers were raised far further up away somewhere else. So were the Edomites, by the way. Makes you wonder, are Khazarian Jews Edomites? Maybe. Who knows?